Welcome to This Got Me Thinking, where clarity comes from conversations and the connections that spark from it. I am your host, Chris LaFay, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with David Reese. Sometimes life takes you exactly where you didn't plan to go, and that ends up being exactly where you need to be. David ended up living in rural Alberta, not necessarily by choice, but by a series of passive decisions that landed him in the middle of nowhere with diesel generators and solar panels and absolutely zero backup plan if things went wrong. And what he discovered in that isolation wasn't just how to fix a broken fuel line at 8 p.m. in the middle of a wintry February snowstorm, but how to approach problems with calm confidence that a lot of folks just never really develop. And now he's embarking on a journey to swap the wilderness for Wall Street. And David's carrying forward these lessons that he learned while in the wilderness. I'll let him tell his story. What actually brought you to Alberta in this like rural area? Like, because the other places you lived were not like this before.
No, Connecticut is not exactly. You don't learn a lot of country grit from Connecticut. The country there is it's Connecticut. What do you want to say? There's not much else to say besides that. So actually, I moved to Alberta in 2016. Again, not that I could have predicted it was going to go this way, but I'm glad that it did because now coming back to the U.S. and returning after 11 years of not living there, a couple in years in Mexico and then the rest in Canada, um, the arc makes sense. Uh, and then yeah, so I know it's not very detailed, but basically it's one of those. What I would say is when you're not actively making choices in your life, uh, the current of life will lead you somewhere, and it's not necessarily a bad place. Because again, I wouldn't change anything, but it's also not necessarily the place that I would have chosen. And I think that's a key difference is even when even when you don't make active choices, then passive choices are happening. So I think it's important to be able to hit life back with equal or greater energy than the current that'll hit you. Otherwise, I think that's where people end up in situations, jobs, relationships, locations that they are like, oh, why am I here? It's like, well, because time plus life equals you a destination, whether that's of your own active choice or not.
When you first arrived and you realized that your, for lack of other terminology, your passive choices landed you on this off the grid rural Alberta area, how much of a shock factor was it when you got there the first day or the first week and having to adjust to this new life?
I mean, I don't think it was the first day, and a lot of that, the passive choices didn't really surface until, you know, 6 to 8 months later, especially on the personal side, but there wasn't a shock to begin with. I think there was a lot of novelty and, you could say almost like a honeymoon period of just like
Yeah.
the, like you're almost like in an Airbnb type of thing, wood stove and, all that good stuff. And, being able to understand how things like worked. But you only understand how things work when they break. Truly. So the shock was like, a couple weeks later when, you're now covered in snow, like, feet of snow and temperatures are dropping in, Alberta fashion. And it just a different landscape, like literally a different playing field. And then, yeah, and then just like when one thing breaks and you're not experienced, especially with machinery and diesel and gas generators and all that, neither was I. Um, it's not even so much like, oh, I don't know how it works, which is the problem. It's more of like, you don't know how to problem solve. You don't know how to troubleshoot. And that was the initial shock of like, wow, like, you know, being more frantic, easy to panic, and just being able to take a step back and be like, okay, what do we got here? What's going on? You have a plan B, you have plan C, so you just know that if something were to, you're prepared for it. And I think that was the shock factor, was just um, understanding that, sure, I had, with time, community members or friends 15 minutes down the range road that could come and help, but like all things considered, it was just me responsible for the operation of this place, right? And if I didn't do it, no one else was coming to the rescue. And that was, yeah, it was like almost a man versus wild situation in a way, right? I wasn't having to like hunt my own food and anything, but still, just that experience of like, you got to find a way. And the more stressed you are, the worse things get. So you have to be calm and collected in order for things to be fixed.
Was there a particular time that something broke, maybe toward the beginning of it, that looking back on it is hysterical, that you could share?
Oh yeah. So this was like February 2022. I remember I had just yeah, pretty much like, you know, I think I had dinner, just taking a shower, just like, chilling, right? I think I was even in like a, bathrobe or something, just to paint the picture, just relaxed, right? And at the time, the diesel generator was hooked up. This was a two-cylinder, basically like Kubota old generator. Like this thing, I called it the vet because this thing was old. Um, and it was hooked up directly to, so it was like a 4 kilowatts, so like 4,000 watt generator,
Yeah.
hooked up to a diesel tank. Um, Probably, I don't know. Yeah, 200, maybe 250 liters diesel tank. So then the diesel tank obviously fed right into the generator. The generator was hooked up to a preheater, right? That would circulate into the generator because in the extreme cold temperatures, you couldn't just start the generator cold. There's no way on a cold
Yeah.
start. Plus, it's not good for the generator. Kind of
Makes
basic
sense.
stuff. Same thing for a car, right? Where you plug it in the winter. Anyways, just to kind of give you the setup. And then the diesel generator is connected to the solar system, right? So the solar system had 12 solar panels. Um, and then it had eight 6-volt batteries, right? Dry cell batteries for the battery bank. And so what would happen in, any type of season, you would have the reception of the solar energy, it would store, convert into the battery bank, that which you can use for later when there wasn't active sun happening. And then obviously in the winter, there's not enough sun to store and charge the batteries, let alone to power the house, which on a daily basis was your, the electricity to power the pump and for the water, obviously light, and then anything connected to outlets, right? For
Yeah.
day-to-day use, refrigerator, blah blah blah. And so in the winter times, you had to run the generator, right, in order to charge the batteries. And in those cold days, maybe you'd have to run it for several hours. Uh, Also, because in Alberta, in middle of December into January, in the darkest, shortest days of the year, you have like couple hours of sunlight, like, and it's an exaggeration, but barely. So you might have to run it once or twice or time it accordingly, and then you might be able to get away with a couple hours where if it's like a little bit of sun, you could be like, all right, I don't have to start the generator right away. I can have my coffee first. So just to paint you the whole picture. So then, yeah, that night, it's like probably 8 p.m. Again, I'm chilling. And at the time, the diesel generator was hooked up to the solar system that you can monitor from your phone. There was and then you could actually stop the generator, start the auxiliary unit, which was the preheater, and then be able to see the input of the watts from the generator or from the sun into the battery bank or into the loads for the house, right? Uh, and so I was looking, and I had heard the generator. You kind of like open the door, kind of because it was in like a workshop, just like, I don't know, 100 feet or something. And then I check the phone, it's like it says 0. I'm just like, what happened? I go out and it's off. I'm like, what's going on? And then obviously just this was like 2 months in, so a little bit of frantic. I hadn't gotten seasoned yet. I was still green and a little bit of a rookie. And I think I had even though I thought I had checked the fuel, I think the fuel had gotten like under. So basically, it wasn't running because there was no fuel. So switched it off. I was like playing around with some of the pieces, and then I was like thinking that this one fuel piece that connected the two lines, I thought I wanted to take that off because I was looking at some of the manuals from previous owners, and I twisted it and just like broke the piece. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just getting worse. So I hope
Oh.
that kind of paints the picture. That's like maybe like 6% of it.
That's a highly specific number, which makes me think that you've taken inventory of these things.
Just a little bit, yeah.
How are you taking all of this kind of like calm confidence and now porting it over to the world's busiest city known to man?
Great question. I think it's just part of me now. I don't think I can switch it off. And it's not like a jaded, you know, like bitter view of life. It's just I've seen some shit, you know, for lack of a better term. And and now I'm not really phased by much. So I'm excited to be able to go into it knowing that I think for some people New York could be, I'm not saying it always would be, but it could be overwhelming or a lot. And just from where I'm coming from and yeah, living out west, which is obviously very different culture as well, and Alberta and Canada, just all of the layers to it. It's just ingrained in me. So I don't think I have to actively necessarily focus on it. It's just more of how I operate. And then now excited to but plug into a pace where I do feel I thrive on, which is that busier pace. But I will say if I had moved to New York like 12 years ago, which I was planning to do, interestingly enough, even with a job or two lined up, I think I would have squandered it. Like, I think I would have made a mess out of it and not really done it right. And so I'm really glad, once again, of even passive or not, how I ended up in this place because now stepping into it, like, I know how to be at that high pace, but with calm. Whereas before, I think it would have just been, youthful speed and not understanding the slow burn and kind of the simmer approach rather than just like, oh yeah, maxing out those flames all the time. So yeah, I'm excited to like plug the um that calm back into a high pace. And I think it'll give me honestly a slight advantage. And with that advantage, use it to then again the benefit for positivity and value and mutually beneficial outcomes, which is what I'm all about.
It's going to be interesting because I'm assuming that the style and structure of life that you're going to bring to New York City is going to be a little bit counter to what people are going to be expecting. And so, especially from a business perspective, being able to not actually match the pace that New York is stereotypically like known for, and being able to come into it with a pace that's different. There's always this part about marketing in general of like you need to look and feel different than the alternative. I'm not saying that you're marketing yourself, but I mean you're going there for business intentions in general. And so that it's kind of like, you put your southern draw person that's, from South Georgia and you shove them up north, like that person stands out like a sore thumb. And so it's going to be interesting to see that, not juxtaposition, that's a little bit too on the nose what I'm looking for, but just it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be fun, exciting, and yeah, I think it'll be um, an interesting twist. Again, even though I'm originally from the States and from that area, to kind of return from it now feeling like I'm from somewhere else and some valuable lessons learned and some funny stories to tell. But yeah, I'm looking forward to bringing a little bit of the wild rose country to the Big Apple.
The question that I have for us today is, when have you found yourself in a situation that ultimately taught you skills that you could not have learned any other way? And I'm not going to sit here today and talk about, how you should look at the active challenge that you're going through and preemptively find the light at the end of that tunnel. And I realize it's not that simple. But my challenge for you today is, whatever problem or challenge that you're going through today, is look back. Look back 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever that number has to be. And you were going through a challenging point at some point. Go back and flip through your journal if you journal on a regular basis. And take a look at that challenge. And kind of put yourself back in your shoes during that point of that feeling that your back was up against the wall, right? And now look at today and see how you have changed from then. What of your leadership style and how you view the world and how you respond and react to various situations, what has changed? Because something has. Most of us that go through a challenging point in life take something with us. And sometimes that nugget is extraordinarily small. Sometimes that nugget is life-altering and life-changing. And then once you've gone through kind of that process of looking back at whatever that was, do look at whatever you're going through right now through that same lens. And you don't have to define what that nugget is. At the end of the day, we have no idea what the end of a challenging point in time will look like. I know with a lot of the challenges that I've gone through, I defined what success would look like at the end of it. And I was like, this is what it's going to be. And ended up looking completely different than anything I could have ever expected or dreamed of. And so if you're going through that challenging time, I simply recommend look back. See where you were before, look at where you're at now, and see how that trajectory has shifted. That's what David got me thinking.